This is Rudrarup Maitra, who has spent over 20 years at Tata Motors, of which most of which was in the international business. So, Rudrarup, could you briefly share with us your career journey and the key experiences that led you to your role at Tata Motors?
Hi, Johan. Firstly, thank you for having me on board. Uh, Time difference and adopting and accommodating my time request. It's almost close to midnight for you. I've spent 25 years with the Tata Group, and a large chunk of it, as you rightly said, was Tata Motors. Tata Motors is my third Tata company, and I joined the Tata Group as a part of the Tata Administrative Service, which is a group level cadre for people who normally rotate through multiple companies within the group, within different functions to get exposure in different industries. So Tata Motors is actually my third company in the group, and a large chunk of my stint in Tata Motors was in the international markets, and that's where I specialized. So while we had our initial marketing stints and our sales and operations stints, where you're territorial managers, and we finally move out of marketing and strategic roles to take on regions in the international markets. So I found myself landing up in Moscow for a period of around 5 years. I was handling Eastern Europe, Russia, CIS at that point of time, and this was in the mid 2000s, around 2006 to 2009, 10. Subsequently, I moved to Johannesburg to handle Sub-Saharan Africa, which was a very, very interesting stint as well. Then around a few years later, came back to India to handle our cash cow, which is South Asia, Far East Asia, and Australia. And subsequently took over as the head of sales and marketing for international business. And by 2015, I was the head of international business, which I headed for a period of around 6 years. My last rotation with Tata Motors was as a product line head, which is the vertical head, where you're responsible end to end for a particular product line, right from conception to investments, to sales, to manufacturing, to project management, market shares, and finally the profit and loss statement. So that's briefly my career. I also had an opportunity of studying at the Carnegie Mellon University for a brief bit when I was doing my Fulbright scholarship back in 2005. And I've held multiple positions in various companies as a member of the board, either in an executive manner or as the chairman of the board or as a board member as well. So I hope that's a brief summary for you and your audience to get to know me a little bit better.
Great. So, as you mentioned, you have worked across many different countries. So, considering these different countries have their own different cultures and economies, and each citizens have their own different purchasing power, when launching products in these different countries, how did Tata effectively collaborate and adapt despite these differences?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I mean, it could take me a couple of days to really answer that question, but if I have to keep it brief, uh, let me give you examples from starting ranging as far as maybe Vietnam, Philippines on the one extreme, which is east of India, moving to a market like Tunisia, which is in North Africa, moving to Nepal, which is just north of India, and even moving to Latin America to Paraguay and Bolivia. I think the sense was that you need to really, when you're looking at a new market, you really need to step back and try to see the category that you're addressing. While you will do all your analysis in terms of the size of the market and whether you have a value proposition or not, which is what you all have taught in school, I think what's important is to get into the fabric of the country. So whether it was the branding team, whether it was the sales and marketing team, whether it was the research team, whether it was the advertising agencies, we pretty much spent weeks in these markets trying to understand the very fabric of the community, the people, the culture. And I can share with you multiple links which you might want to put up for your audience, to starting from pickup trucks to small trucks to big and medium trucks, how we ended up launching, and buses as well, how we ended up creating a connect between the people, between the target markets or the target audience, as well as the brand. They can have a look at those links and have a look at what was the variance that you had, or in approach, that is. In Tunisia specifically, I mean, we have spent time with historians, we have spent time with professors of sociology, we have spent time with businessmen, we have spent time with bankers, market research agencies, government officials, entrepreneurs, some key influencers in certain cities and large towns to really understand what keeps them going. So every market, Nepal was the same. Team got divided into six parts of the country. Might appear to be a very small country, but many of these countries do have a centralized fabric, but at the same time they can be very regionalized as well, right? So some of these campaigns become generic in that particular region, and you can make variations to enter different markets using the same campaign. But coming back to your question, how do you understand the people and how do you understand the culture? A lot of research, a lot of time spent on the ground, because ultimately what you're looking at is, do you have a valid value proposition that can connect to the people? So the gloss and the branding and the hype and the glamour, all of that is fine, but there has to be a very strong value proposition as compared to the rest of the competition for you to be able to cut through the clutter as an offering in that market and to add pretty much to the lives of the people that you're selling to. This is an engineering product, it's an automobile product, it generates livelihood, and sometimes it generates convenience, sometimes it's a mix of both. And that's how we would actually approach a market. So lot of demographics, lot of psychographics, which you guys are taught in school, but I cannot, emphasize the importance of geopolitics. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of history, sociology when you enter. And these are some of the softer aspects that are normally not taught to students and that you kind of pick up as you go along in terms of work experience when you're working with some of these brands.
I definitely think that these are very important characteristics when looking at a country to launch a product. And so many young people in India dream of starting their own business. And for a young Indian entrepreneur with a great idea, what advice do you have for expanding their business internationally?
See, if you're starting off as an entrepreneur in India, I'm pretty sure that your first, area of success would be India itself, where you would need to establish. It's a massive market, 1.4 billion people, enough to be done. But yes, if the intent is to expand outside of India, I think one needs to invest a lot of time in understanding the mechanics of how exports actually happen, right? Starting right from the commercials to the trade norms to the FTA. So the export councils in India, and there are multiple ones, uh, they have a lot of courses, right? Which you can get your commercials and you can get your basic export understanding and lexicon and the processes. You can get an understanding of those. And I believe that that is very important to go through. So in a large organization like ours, if we had new inductees, right, new joinees, they would be taken through an intensive program of over a week to understand those norms. But it's fairly easy to do the same outside as well. And there are a lot of courses that have been designed by these various export bodies and councils to help promote youngsters getting into the side of export. That's one. So that takes care of trying to figure out, how this happens, because there's a lot of banking, there are a lot of instruments that you have that you use for exports. It's not a simple cash transaction. There could be letters of credit, there could be bank guarantees, it could be a cash transaction. So you need to get a grip on that. That's number one. Number two is a bit of an idea in terms of foreign exchange and treasury, because you're going to be dealing in multiple currencies. And let's assume for a moment that you're not exporting just to North America or to the European Union, and the rest of the world is open up to your products, which is a lot of Middle East and Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia. Uh, you would need to at least have a decent understanding, because the US dollar becomes a conversion currency. So there's a cross rate between your home country and your host country, right? So uh, how many rupees through the dollar end up giving you how many X currency units at your host country? And what is the most economical way for you and the safest way for you to make that transaction happen? A little bit of understanding in terms of law, international law, because there are various types of law. Uh, Arbitrage can happen in multiple countries under multiple kinds of law. So you can have contracts which are written under English law or any other law, Swiss law, or Indian law, but the seat of arbitration could be Singapore, right? But you are exporting from India to, let's say, Morocco. Okay. But the seat of arbitration in case of a dispute could be Singapore, it could be London, it could be Paris. Again, depends on the kind of law that you're choosing. So while you do not need to excel in it, you need a bit of an idea to get through because there are experts in international law. There are legal firms who are experts in international law. Understanding your partner, right? Who you're choosing as a partner, the antecedent checks that are done, the due diligence that are done. Again, there are a lot of firms that help you with the same, but do not think for a moment that you can trust somebody blindly in terms of partner selection. You need to do your own due diligence and your own homework. You need to have references from the bankers, from the, if it is an Indian businessman, then I would highly recommend reaching out to the commercial attaché at the Indian high commissions of these countries because they would have a lot of knowledge and a lot of networks to get you that kind of information. And last but not the least, the most important differentiator in terms of costs is supply chain. So to understand the terminologies of supply chain, the vessels that you would be using, the customs requirements that you have on both ends, the clearance of goods, how long that takes, what are the penalties like. So it's a whole host of commercial requirements that you should actually get used to. But supply chain can become a major, major differentiator. It shouldn't be underestimated, right? So these would be some of the things that were practical on the ground. But yes, the same question that I answered previously, a lot of research, getting to know people, grinding yourself on the ground, feet on street, nothing can replace that. So once you check your product out with the end customers who are going to buy it, I think it's when you get all these data points together, you have the case to actually go ahead and make a financial proposition or a proper business case to say whether the entire transaction or whether the setting up this business and establishing this business makes sense or not. And that's exactly how we've done it for so many years.
Great. So I'm sure answering these questions will surely help any business student or anyone interested in international business. So thank you so much for your time, Rudrarup, and for sharing your experience and your knowledge. And best of luck for in the future.
I think that there is a lot to take away from this interview with Rudrarup, with his international expertise, with him primarily emphasizing the importance of understanding cultural background of new markets. So for aspiring entrepreneurs, Rudro's advice is clear that before taking a business global, to invest time in understanding global export procedures, international law, and foreign exchange. Choosing the right partners and optimizing your supply chain is also crucial, and but most importantly, to get on the ground and to create a personal connection with your uh, potential customers. So thanks again to Rudro for sharing his insights. We wish him all the best, and to our viewers, good luck.